The Bible is not only a sacred book dedicated to the people of Israel, but also contains prophecies and profound lessons for all peoples of the world. In its pages, India, a country with a unique culture, history, and spirituality, is also mentioned, not only as a part of history, but also in prophecies about the future. Although the Bible does not directly speak of India in the way it speaks of other nations such as Egypt, Assyria, or Babylon, the peoples of the East, including India, are mentioned indirectly through historical and spiritual connections. The prophecies of the Bible show that every nation, large or small, has a role to play in God's plan of salvation and restoration. The appearance of India in the prophecies is not just a part of the past, but also an invitation for each individual and nation to seek God's truth, to expand love and justice in this world. Number 1. India, a mysterious connection to the Bible. Although India is not directly mentioned in the Bible, the connection between this country and the biblical stories is extremely deep. These connections stem not only from India's religious traditions, but also from the historical stories that have shaped its culture and people. We can better understand this connection through some special aspects, reflecting how India fits into the larger flow of biblical history. One of the important points in the biblical story is life after the flood. After Noah and his family survived the Great Flood, the earth was repopulated by his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. In Genesis 10, the Bible describes the division of peoples and nations from Noah's sons. Although India is not directly mentioned, through it we can realize that the country of India is different from that of other so-called people, which is why the earth has a special connection with one of Japheth's descendants. Japheth, considered the ancestor of the peoples of Eurasia, was responsible for the migration and spread of ethnic groups across the lands. Japheth's sons, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras, formed large communities and laid the foundations for the nations of Europe and Asia. Among Japheth's sons, Javan is believed to be the ancestor of the Eurasian peoples, which may have included populations that inhabited India. Although there is no explicit mention of India in the Table of Nations in Genesis 10, the division of peoples and the migration of Japheth's descendants formed part of the cultural and religious development of the region. The ethnic groups that inhabited the area now known as India may have been descendants of the peoples that Japheth spawned, especially those of the Indo-European group. The migration of these groups may have helped to form a rich culture and religion in India, where cultural influences and exchanges with other civilizations gradually develop. This connection can be understood through the trade between the countries in the region. In the Bible, stories related to migrations and trade exchanges between countries, although not completely detailed about India, the trade routes and cultural connections between peoples reflect a continuous interaction. The Indo-European peoples migrated across many lands, bringing with them their religious beliefs, traditions, and languages, creating drastic changes in the history of India. In this way, India is not just a distant country in biblical history, but an integral part of the larger story of humanity. While this information may not be explicitly mentioned in the biblical texts, through the migrations and developments of peoples, we can see that the Bible is not just a book of the Near East, but has influenced other cultures and peoples, including India. The history and culture of India have a strange overlap with the story of the Bible. Although not directly in the sites of the main events of the Bible, the country has elements that reflect the power of migration, cultural and religious exchange, and the influence of the ancient cultures that the Bible records. This connection may be deeper than we think, opening up a broader and more comprehensive view of the relationships between nations and cultures throughout human history. Number 2. The mysterious connection between King Solomon and India. Throughout human history, trade routes have served not only as physical links between nations, but also as bridges between cultures, religions, and economies. One of the most striking and intriguing examples is the connection between the Kingdom of Israel under King Solomon and the civilizations of the East, especially India. Through the ancient trade routes, a flow of precious goods passed, bringing not only wealth, but also far-reaching cultural influences. King Solomon, known for his unparalleled wisdom and prosperity, was the epitome of a powerful and wise king. According to the Bible, his wealth was not accidental, but resulted from the extensive trade relationships he built with the surrounding nations. One of the most striking stories of King Solomon's prosperity is recorded in 1 Kings 10:22. King Solomon had a large fleet in the Red Sea, along with the fleets of Hiram. Every 3 years this fleet returned from Tarsus, gold, silver, ivory, parrots, and monkeys. However, there is an important detail that many people may not realize. The trade routes were not limited to Western countries, but also extended to the East, where there were valuable resources such as spices, precious stones, and gold, which Solomon received from merchants in the region. India, with its strategic position on the ancient trade map, was not only a great civilization, but also an important center of trade. Ancient trade routes, especially the spice route, connected India with civilizations in the Middle East, including Israel. These routes were not only physical roads, but also transportation axes that connected cultures and religions between countries. Among them, India played an important role in providing valuable goods that King Solomon received, such as spices, precious stones, and gold. With the flourishing of these trade routes, not only goods but also cultures and religions were exchanged and influenced by each other. The connection between the Middle Eastern and Indian civilizations created a unique cultural fusion. People from both regions shared their values, knowledge, and beliefs, creating a rich and diverse culture. This can be seen in the influence of Indian teachings and beliefs on the Middle East, as well as the cultural elements from Eastern civilizations influencing the culture of Israel. These trade routes not only provided valuable resources, but also played a role in creating and maintaining commercial relationships between countries. From commodities such as spices and precious stones, to gold and ivory, everything reflected a world that was deeply and intimately connected. King Solomon's wealth was not only the result of his excellent financial management skills, but also a testament to his wisdom in building and maintaining long-term and fruitful trade relationships. Through the story of King Solomon and the trade routes between Israel and India, we see not only material prosperity, but also a picture of the spiritual connection between nations. These relationships not only brought economic benefits, but also promoted cultural exchange, creating harmony in differences. And in today's world, these lessons from the past can still teach us about the importance of building lasting relationships and respecting differences which benefit everyone. Ultimately, the lesson from King Solomon and his trade routes shows that wealth and prosperity come not only from material possessions, but also from the deep relationships we build and maintain. Number 3. The journey of Thomas the Apostle, opening the way for the gospel in India. The Apostle Thomas is one of the most important figures in the history of Christian missionary work. His connection with India was not only part of his personal journey, but also contributed to the fulfillment of the Great Commission given by Jesus. According to tradition, around 52 AD, Thomas arrived on the coast of Kerala in southern India, carrying the message of God and establishing the first Christian communities there. This event is not only India's most direct connection with the Bible, but also a clear demonstration of the fulfillment of Jesus' Great Commission. Thomas came to India not as an ordinary missionary. He had a great mission to spread the gospel of Jesus to a distant land where ancient religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism had long been present. His journey not only expanded the influence of Christianity, not only did he establish the first Christian community in India, but he also created a deep cultural and religious legacy. His connection to the Kerala region helped make it an enduring center of Christianity. Thomas left a deep mark on history by founding the Maroma community, the first Christian community in India. The followers of the Maroma community are proud to be the direct descendants of his mission. This legacy has become an integral part of the story of the spread of Christianity, and it has continued to live on through the centuries. The Maroma community still exists today, a testament to the resilience and faith that Thomas inspired. Thomas's journey is not only geographically significant, but also carries a profound symbolic message. His journey to India, at a time when it was considered the end of the world, was the first step in fulfilling Jesus' Great Commission. Go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them, teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. Matthew 28:19-20. For Thomas, going to India was an essential step in fulfilling his God-given mission, not only because of its geographical remoteness, but also because of its global nature. India, despite its long history of culture and religion, has been slow to embrace the gospel. Although the dominance of indigenous religions, such as Hinduism, has created resistance to Christianity for centuries, the gospel has spread vigorously in areas such as Kerala and elsewhere in India. The growth of Christianity here was not the result of a single individual effort, but the result of Thomas's perseverance, unwavering faith, and the doors he opened for the world to know God. The Apostle Thomas's importance is measured in historical terms and in profound theological significance. His journey to India was a fulfillment of part of the Great Commission, a part of the global mission that Jesus gave to his disciples. The early presence of Christianity in India formed part of a larger story of the spread of the gospel in the ancient world, extending the reach of Christianity to peoples and cultures that had never known him. Thomas's journey and the growth of the Christian community in India also provide us with a valuable lesson in patience and faithfulness to God's mission. Despite many challenges and resistance, the gospel of God has been accepted and grown over time, demonstrating the power of God's word to transform cultures and societies. The spread of the gospel in India is not only significant for Christianity, but also shows part of the universal plan of salvation that God has prepared from the beginning. The Great Commission is not only a call for the disciples of God, but also an incredible journey, bringing the gospel to faraway places despite all difficulties and challenges. The event of Thomas coming to India proved that no border can stop God's mission. The lesson from Thomas's journey also reminds us of the role each of us plays in spreading God's gospel. Wherever we are, we can still be the ones carrying out the mission that God has entrusted to us. Thomas's action was not just a missionary journey, but an invitation for all of us to bear witness to God's love and salvation in the world today. The early presence of Christianity in India has helped lay a solid foundation for the future of Christianity in Asia. We can clearly see that no matter how the world changes, God's message resonates everywhere, calling all peoples and nations to return to Him. And this, in turn, is the great fulfillment of the Great Commission that Jesus entrusted us to. Exposition 10, verses 13 through 21. Number 4. Jesus and the Hidden Years, the Quest for Truth. Jesus is one of the most important figures in human history. His life has had a profound impact not only on the Christian faith, but also on many other cultures. However, there is a period of his life, from his childhood until the beginning of his public ministry, that the Bible does not record in detail. This period is often referred to as the lost years. The theory of these lost years has been the subject of much speculation and debate. Some believe that during this period Jesus may have traveled to India, where he may have learned from the country's rich spiritual and intellectual traditions. These include not only Hinduism, but also Buddhism, which teaches about enlightenment, liberation from suffering, and compassion, concepts that seem to resonate with Jesus' message of love, forgiveness, and salvation. During these lost years, from when Jesus was about 12 years old until he began his public ministry at age 30, the Bible provides no clear information about him. This has given rise to speculation, one of which is that Jesus traveled to the East, specifically India, to learn from and possibly be influenced by Indian monks and philosophers. One of the most prominent documents promoting this theory is the book The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ by Nikolai Notovich, a 19th century Russian scholar. Notovich claimed that he had discovered a copy of an ancient document in a Tibetan monastery that stated that Jesus traveled to India and met with Indian masters during a lost time. Although this is a controversial story, it has attracted the attention of many, especially those seeking a deeper understanding of Jesus' life and mission. The connection between Jesus' teachings and Indian philosophies is also noteworthy. The Christian teachings of compassion, forgiveness, and salvation have many similarities with the principles of Hinduism and Buddhism. These points seem to indicate that there may have been a cross-fertilization of cultures and knowledge, and that Jesus may have been influenced by these traditions, although there is no clear evidence to support this. However, not everyone agrees with this theory. Traditional Christian theologians, as well as Christian traditionalists, argue that there is no solid biblical basis for Jesus to have visited India. According to them, all of his teachings were derived from the Jewish tradition, and there was no natural reason why he would be taken and attacked Roman doubt. No evidence exists in the Christian or biblical texts of contact between Jesus and Eastern teachings. They argue that any connection between Jesus and Indian traditions is mere speculation or unsubstantiated theory. However, some see this as an opportunity to re-examine what we know about Jesus and what he may have experienced during the period not recorded in the Bible. If Jesus did visit India, it opens up interesting questions about the interplay between spiritual traditions worldwide and what we can learn from other cultures. Whether or not we believe this theory, it is important to recognize that Jesus conveyed profound messages of love, forgiveness, and salvation. These values remain strong in the minds of millions of believers worldwide. His teachings have crossed borders and influenced many cultures, not only in the West, but also in the East. This proves that his message is timeless and beyond time and space, and we can find wisdom in all the lessons he left behind. While the lost years remain a mystery, we can learn from the great lessons Jesus left for the world. Whether or not he went to India, his values of love and forgiveness are still the most important things we can learn and live by in this life. Ultimately, no matter how we question the lost years of Jesus, it is important to focus on the lessons he taught throughout his public ministry. Love, forgiveness, and salvation are timeless messages that can guide us through life's challenges and find peace in God. Number 5. India and its role in the Great Commission. India, a country with deep religious and cultural diversity, has played a significant role in the growth of Christianity worldwide. Despite facing strong opposition from traditional religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam, Christianity has grown in India, especially in areas such as Kerala and northeastern India. This proves that, despite many challenges, the Christian faith can survive and thrive even in a rich and diverse religious environment like India. India is not only home to over 2,000 ethnic groups and over 700 languages, but is also home to many major religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Sikhism, and Christianity. It is this diversity that makes India an important part in fulfilling the Great Commission given by Jesus to his disciples. Jesus commanded his followers to go into all the world and make disciples of every nation, tribe, and language. This Great Commission is meant for Middle Eastern countries and covers all the world's nations, including India. Matthew 28:19, salvation through sympathy, shows that the disciples of Jesus were to go out and baptize all nations and teach them to obey everything God has commanded. And in Revelation 7:9, there is a description of a great multitude from every nation, tribe, people, and language standing before the throne of God and the Lamb. With over 2,000 ethnic groups and over 700 languages spoken in India, the country could be one of the important harvest fields fulfilling this prophecy. Although Christianity in India faces many difficulties, the faith is still thriving in certain areas, such as Kerala and northeast India. Kerala is one of the prominent regions where Christianity has existed since the time of the apostles, especially through the influence of the apostle Thomas. Christianity in Kerala has had a significant impact on religious life and spread into the social and cultural spheres. Northeast India, especially the states of Nagaland, Mizoram, and Meghalaya, are regions with strong Christian communities. Although not the first place where Christianity entered India, this region has now become a major center of Christian growth, with an astonishing growth rate over the past century. Christianity is not only present in the big cities, but also has a profound influence in the rural areas. India is not only a populous country, but also home to one of the largest unreached ethnic groups in the world. According to reports from missionary organizations, there are still millions of people in India who have never heard of the gospel, making it a vital mission field for those who want to fulfill God's Great Commission. Missionary organizations and Christian churches work tirelessly to bring the good news to unreached areas. When Jesus commissioned his disciples to take the gospel to all nations, India could not be left out of this strategy. With its vast religious diversity and population, India is an important part of God's plan to take the gospel everywhere. According to the prophecy in Revelation, one day a great multitude from every nation, tribe, people, and language will stand before the throne of God and worship him. And India, with its deep religious diversity, could be one of the places where this will happen. International missionary organizations are now emphasizing reaching areas where Christianity is underdeveloped. Spreading the gospel to every corner of India is part of the overall Christian effort to fulfill the Great Commission. Despite all the challenges, Christianity in India has and will continue to spread, significantly contributing to God's work of creating a world that worships him. With the growth of Christian communities in areas like Kerala and northeast India, we see that despite the many difficulties and obstacles, the light of the gospel can still shine into every corner of this world. And as God said in Matthew 28 verse 19, "Go and make disciples of all nations." Every believer of God has a part to play in this great work. With its diversity and cultural richness, India will be an essential part of that journey, where every person and language can stand before the throne of God, worship him, and receive salvation from him. Number 6. India in God's apocalyptic plan. Although India is not directly mentioned in biblical prophecies, its growing global influence and spiritual significance make it likely to play a significant role in the end times. To better understand this role, we need to look at the technical elements associated with India in the Bible, especially in passages that describe the judgment of nations based on how they respond to God's truth. The Bible frequently speaks of nations and their response to God's truth. A nation's acceptance or rejection of the gospel, especially through the preaching of apostles and missionaries, is a key factor in determining its spiritual fate in the end times. India, with its long history of religious diversity and deep spiritual beliefs, may face a great choice. Will it open itself to the gospel of God? Will God continue to uphold his beliefs, the majority of which do not acknowledge Jesus as the Messiah? With over 1.4 billion people and over 2,000 different ethnic groups, India will be a decisive nation in the final judgment. The confrontations between spiritual beliefs and the country's response to the gospel could turn India into a spiritual battlefield in the final stages of human history, where each person must choose: follow Christ or continue to reject him. Revelation, one of the key books in the Bible that deals with the final judgment, shows that all people from every nation, people, and language will face God's judgment. In Revelation 7:9, we see a vision of a great crowd from all countries, peoples, and languages standing before the throne of God and Christ, representing the fulfillment of the missionary mandate given by God to his disciples. India, with its vast population and diverse religious culture, will face a major judgment. Will it accept Christ and join the wheat of his kingdom, or will it continue to reject him and become part of the weeds that will be judged on the last day? The spiritual complexity of India will play a key role in the final judgment. Although the Christian community has long existed there, most of the population continues to follow indigenous religions such as Hinduism, Islam, and Buddhism. This makes India one of the critical playgrounds for spiritual warfare in the final stages of history. With its vast population and religious diversity, India could become a center for major events in the end times. Unreached people groups will be the main targets of missionary work in the final stages of human history. The final judgment is not just a religious event, but a call for all nations, including India, to face their choice, to embrace the truth. Number 6. India in God's apocalyptic plan. Although India is not directly mentioned in biblical prophecies, its growing global influence and spiritual significance make it likely to play a significant role in the end times. To better understand this role, we need to look at the technical elements associated with India in the Bible, especially in passages that describe the judgment of nations based on how they respond to God's truth. The Bible frequently speaks of nations and their response to God's truth. A nation's acceptance or rejection of the gospel, especially through the preaching of apostles and missionaries, is a key factor in determining its spiritual fate in the end times. India, with its long history of religious diversity and deep spiritual beliefs, may face a great choice. Will it open itself to the gospel of God? Will God continue to uphold his beliefs, the majority of which do not acknowledge Jesus as the Messiah? With over 1.4 billion people and over 2,000 different ethnic groups, India will be a decisive nation in the final judgment. The confrontations between spiritual beliefs and the country's response to the gospel could turn India into a spiritual battlefield in the final stages of human history, where each person must choose: follow Christ or continue to reject him. Revelation, one of the key books in the Bible that deals with the final judgment, shows that all people from every nation, people, and language will face God's judgment. In Revelation 7:9, we see a vision of a great crowd from all countries, peoples, and languages standing before the throne of God and Christ, representing the fulfillment of the missionary mandate given by God to his disciples. India, with its vast population and diverse religious culture, will face a major judgment. Will it accept Christ and join the wheat of his kingdom, or will it continue to reject him and become part of the weeds that will be judged on the last day? The spiritual complexity of India will play a key role in the final judgment. Although the Christian community has long existed there, most of the population continues to follow indigenous religions such as Hinduism, Islam, and Buddhism. This makes India one of the important playgrounds for spiritual warfare in the final stages of history. With its vast population and religious diversity, India could become a center for major events in the end times. Unreached people groups will be the main targets of missionary work in the final stages of human history. The final judgment is not just a religious event, but a call for all nations, including India, to face their choice, to embrace the truth of God or continue down the path of rejection. Every people, every nation will be held accountable for this choice. When we look at India, we see not only a nation with a diverse religious history, but also a sign of the final judgment. We are called to pray for this country and all nations, that they may open their hearts to the gospel of God and participate in God's great salvation for all who believe in Him. In the end times, judgment will not only be about what we have done, but also about what we have chosen, especially in accepting or rejecting God's truth. Let us be prepared, vigilant, and turn our hearts to God, no matter how the world around us changes. So India, with its rich population and culture, may play a significant role in the final judgment. Every individual and every nation, including India, will face the decisive question: are they ready to accept Jesus as their Savior? This choice will determine their spiritual future in God's eternal kingdom. With faith in God's wisdom and justice, we can pray that India, along with other nations, will find light in the truth of the gospel and will be part of the great Christian family in the last days. Number 7. Spiritual war in India, a contest of faiths. India, with its diverse culture and religion, has long been a spiritual battlefield where supernatural forces and major religions such as Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Sikhism, and Christianity coexist. While each religion has its distinct characteristics, the interplay and sometimes confrontation between them creates a complex and interesting spiritual picture, and is also the basis for a spiritual war that has lasted from century to century. India's religious landscape. India is not only the birthplace of some of the world's largest religions, but also a place where these religions intermingle, sometimes confront and sometimes merge with each other. Followers of Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Sikhism, and Christianity practice their faith in a society filled with religious and belief diversity. This diversity not only creates a war of ideas, but also the basis for a deep spiritual war where conflicting values and beliefs confront each other. Hinduism, with its rich pantheon and long-standing spiritual traditions, is dominant in India. Hindu values, such as harmony with the universe and the concept of rebirth, have shaped Indian culture and society for thousands of years. It is a highly philosophical religion, where people seek liberation from the cycle of reincarnation. Buddhism, although originating in India, has lost its influence over time in its native land. However, its values of peace, compassion, and enlightenment still have a profound impact on many people in India. Islam came to India in the 7th century and is now the second largest religion in the country. With its teachings of complete submission to Allah and belief in the perfection of the Quran, Islam has left a deep mark on Indian spiritual and social life. Sikhism, which originated in the 15th century in Punjab, although not a majority, has played an essential role in the Indian community. Sikhism upholds the values of justice and community service, emphasizing harmony among believers of different faiths. Christianity, which came to India in the 1st century through the preaching of St. Thomas, has grown recently, especially during the colonial period and beyond. Christianity has had a profound impact on many regions, especially Kerala and northeastern India. The Greater Spiritual War. The spiritual war in India is not just a confrontation between religions, but also a struggle between spiritual values, invisible forces, and resistance to the spread of new faiths. Many Christians believe that this battle is part of a larger divine plan that Jesus spoke of, and that it will lead to the fulfillment of the final prophecies in the Bible. Jesus and his mission. This spiritual battle is part of the mission that Jesus gave his disciples, to preach the gospel to all world nations. Matthew 28 verse 19 records Jesus' call to his disciples to go and make disciples of all nations. An essential part of this mission was the spread of Christianity to India, despite strong resistance from many indigenous religions. This was a challenging mission requiring perseverance and strong faith, but it was also part of the divine plan that God had laid out all along. Resistance and progress. Despite centuries of resistance from colonial and modern governments in India, Christianity has continued to thrive throughout its history. The growth of the Christian community, especially in the northeast and south of India, is a testament to the power and vitality of the mission. Resistance from indigenous religions and other spiritual forces has always been present, but Christianity has continued to grow and spread. Resisting the popularity of Christianity. Indigenous religions and other spiritual forces have always struggled to maintain their position in Indian society. This has created a struggle not only for religious, but also for spiritual and social power. However, the fact that Christianity has continued to thrive in this challenging context is evidence of the intervention of a more divine force, which many Christians believe is the guidance of the Holy Spirit. India and the fulfillment of prophecy. The Bible contains many prophecies about spreading the gospel to all peoples and nations. Matthew 24:14 says that the gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all nations, and then the end will come. Together with Revelation 7:9, which describes a vision of a great multitude from every people, tribe, nation, and language standing before the throne of God, we see that the spread of Christianity and the preaching of the gospel to all corners of the world is not only a religious goal, but also an integral part of the fulfillment of the final prophecies of the Bible. India, with its rich religious diversity and melting pot of different faiths, is not only a religious battleground, but also a tremendous spiritual battlefield where Christianity faces great challenges. However, the growth of Christianity in India, despite all the difficulties, is a clear sign of the fulfillment of God's final prophecies. Every step of this mission is not only a step closer to the resurrection and salvation of all peoples, but also a living testimony to the righteousness and power of God. This is a spiritual battle that every believer must engage in, not only in words, but also in actions, to contribute to the spread of God's love, salvation, and gospel to all peoples. In the Bible, India is not directly mentioned as a specific country. Still, through the prophecies, we can see the connection between this land and historical events and the world's future. The peoples of the East, including India, mentioned in the prophetic books such as Isaiah, Revelation, and others, are part of God's great plan. God has always cared for all nations, near and far, and the prophecies about India are a reminder that every country has a role to play in the salvation and restoration of the world. Through these prophecies, we realize that God not only loves Israel, but He also has plans for other nations, including India. These peoples will participate in restoring the world, the peace and justice that God has promised. The prophecies about India in the Bible are not only a reminder of past events, but also a prediction of a hopeful future, when all people will recognize the greatness and power of God. Hopefully, through these shares, you will have a deeper insight into the connection between India and the prophecies in the Bible. To continue discovering the lessons from God and the prophecies in the Bible, remember to follow and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next videos. God always has a good plan for each of us, and we just need to follow Him firmly.